Backchat TV. Subscribe.
He has also talked about it. That left hook is so good, and it's so long and so precise and so hard, but
What's going on, boxing fans? It's Backchat TV and I'm back with a new video. This is breaking news at the moment. Oh gosh, Terence Crawford unfortunately doesn't seem to be set to get that big fight, that middleweight, junior middleweight title that Terence Crawford wants so much against Tim Tszyu. It doesn't seem to be happening. The PBC have made a different fight, which probably caught everybody off guard. Certainly caught me off guard. Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman's back. Keith, one-time Thurman. Fights once in a decade Thurman, you could say. Last fight he had was with Mario Barrios, I believe. And he looked quite good in that fight. But previous to that, he lost to Manny Pacquiao. And then before that, he's just been off for, I don't know how long, is it 3 years or something? Injured, chronic injuries. I got nothing against Keith Thurman. I like Keith Thurman a lot, actually. I like his mind. I like the way he talks. I feel like if he could just perform like the way his mind performs, I think he'd be the best in the world. But yeah, came out of nowhere. Breaking news, man. Keith Thurman is fighting the middleweight, junior middleweight champion, Tim Tszyu, on the 30th of March in Las Vegas. The fight is also pay-per-view, actually. I don't know why they've made it pay-per-view fight. I didn't understand it. I didn't see any real pay-per-view stars. I don't know how they can justify making it pay-per-view. Personally, PBC have put it on pay-per-view. I thought it should be free because, you know, the main event with Tim Tszyu and Keith Thurman, yes, they are good fighters and, you know, relatively well known, but it's not for a title, it's not for a belt. And Tim Tszyu isn't really a huge star yet, although I think he's a huge talent. I don't think he's a huge star. And Keith Thurman was a star, but I don't know. I wouldn't put this on a pay-per-view. I think it's conning the public, to be honest. But anyway, it is a pay-per-view fight, so there you go. The undercard has some good fights. Cruz is taking on Rollie Romero. That's a good fight, but again, it's not a pay-per-view fight. You know, not a title fight. It's a good fight though. I don't think it warrants a pay-per-view. Maybe if it was Rollie versus Ryan Garcia, that would be pay-per-view, I think. Anyway, I digress. I was talking about the main event, Tim Tszyu against Keith Thurman. I thought it was going to be Terence Crawford. I don't know exactly how Terence Crawford feels about this, but I can only imagine that he's pretty upset because I know personally Terence Crawford was really gunning for this fight with Tim Tszyu. His plan, obviously, we know this by now, was to move up to middleweight to 154 pounds and fight Tim Tszyu and get that strap, and then he can call himself three-weight world champion. And hopefully call out Jamal Charlo, and then he could be undisputed. And, you know, maybe down the line, fight Errol Spence. But Errol Spence really wasn't in Terence Crawford's mind. Since all the stuff with the injury and all this stuff, you know, Terence Crawford basically seemed to get quite upset by all the excuses made by Errol Spence and his team about cataract surgery, rib injuries, and all the rest of it. And Terence Crawford didn't like that because obviously it takes away from his win. So he tried to get out of the rematch. And I don't think it's just as simple as that he just wanted to get out of the rematch. It's just, you know, if Errol Spence is injured and he's saying he wants it, but at the same time he's injured, how long is that going to take? You know, if he's showing pictures of himself being wheeled out of hospital and he's saying, yeah, when I get ready, I'm going to be ready for the fight. You know, you can already see that the excuses, when Terence Crawford beats him again, there's going to be more excuses. You know, I wasn't really ready, you know. Terence Crawford didn't want all that. And so after Errol Spence came out with oh, I couldn't see the punches, that's why Terence Crawford had enough, and he has made his exit to try to go on to a different fight, something else. I'm not sure what that looks like, because obviously they have a contract, but I don't know the ins and outs of the contract, and if the contract, it expired at any time, maybe, due to Errol Spence being injured, maybe the contract expired, or maybe there's some kind of expiry date, and Terence Crawford is trying to take advantage of that so that he can get out of it and move on with his career. And I'm all for that, man. I'm all for that. I actually was looking forward to seeing Terence Crawford fight Tim Tszyu, because I said in a previous video I think it would be a tough fight. Kind of unhappy that he didn't get that fight, but at the same time I am a Keith Thurman kind of fan in a way. I like Keith Thurman. I really wanted him to come back sooner, and this is perfect for him. A shot at Tim Tszyu. I was thinking that Keith Thurman's plan, and the reason why he took this fight, which is not at his normal weight, at 155 pounds. I'm going to get into why it's not 154 pounds. But Keith Thurman actually has taken this fight, I thought initially, because he wants to beat Tim Tszyu, become the junior middleweight champion, and then he'll be the man, and then he'll make the fight with Terence Crawford. Because Terence Crawford, remember, Keith Thurman wanted a shot at Terence Crawford at 147 pounds, and Terence Crawford ignored him. I was thinking of a scenario where Keith Thurman fights Tim Tszyu, beats Tim Tszyu, becomes the junior middleweight champion, and then says his famous, infamous line, "You better not duck me, son. You better not duck me, Terence Crawford." And Terence Crawford would have to fight him for the middleweight belt. And I thought maybe that was something that would happen. But then I heard reports that it's not for the belt. Yes, the junior middleweight belt is not on the line because the WBO didn't actually sanction the bout between Keith Thurman and Tim Tszyu. So it's not sanctioned by the WBO. So it's happening at a catch weight of 155 pounds. The belt's not on the line. So we'll have to see what happens, but the belt definitely is not on the line. Let's get into the fight. Keith Thurman and Tim Tszyu. I'm happy to see Keith Thurman back. I said I was a fan. I think I'm more of a supporter of Keith Thurman. I think he was a great talent, and then unfortunately with all the injuries, he wasn't able to fulfill that talent, but now he's hopefully getting a chance. Personally, I don't know if I like this fight in regards to Keith Thurman's chance of winning. Keith Thurman's a good fighter, very good fighter, great mover, great feet, but I think he's bitten off a lot with Tim Tszyu. I think Tim Tszyu's underrated. Tim Tszyu at 155 pounds will be very powerful, very strong, and I feel like I've seen some fighters have Keith Thurman on the back foot all night, and even if he's still won, he's been on the back foot, and I'm not quite sure if I'm a believer in that one-time power anymore, because I haven't seen that power turn up at 147 pounds. And Tim Tszyu's a tough guy, man. I feel that Tim Tszyu will be able to take Keith Thurman's power, and I feel like he's going to track him down eventually, and it's going to be kind of like, running away from the tide. I really hold Tim Tszyu quite highly, probably more highly than most people. I think he's a really skilled fighter. He's tough, he's strong, he's a good puncher, and not just because of what he did to Mendoza, but I feel like he's a really good fighter. I think he's a top fighter, but we just haven't seen enough of him. And I think it's Tim Tszyu's chance to really come out and perform and actually show people that he's the world beater that I think he is. And I think on the 30th of March, Tim Tszyu is the one who's going to show the new generation what it's all about. I think he'll beat Keith Thurman. Now I know it's a tricky fight. It's going to be a good fight because Keith Thurman's a warrior. He's experienced. He's still got that love and passion for the game. He stays in good shape. He's got good feet, But end of the day, I just think there's a big difference between 147 pounds and 155 pounds. I know Keith Thurman has fought at junior middleweight before. At 155 pounds, Tim Tszyu is very powerful and he's very strong and he's young. He's not going to run out of gas, you know, like these older fighters. And I can just see Keith Thurman being on the back foot, trying to punch his way out, trying to move around the ring, and eventually it's going to catch up with him, you know. I remember, I think his name was Lopez, when Keith Thurman fought this guy. Please remind me his name, anyone in the comments, something Lopez. And Keith Thurman was supposed to win easily, and it was like the toughest fight of his career, you know, and that guy isn't, you know, a standout champion or anything like that. And he gave Keith Thurman all the problems in the world. A number of times we've seen Keith Thurman hurt to the body. Even Mario Barrios hurt him to the body. And previous to that, a lot of fighters have hurt him to the body. And this is when he was younger without injuries. We see Manny Pacquiao, a 40-something-year-old veteran, beat Keith Thurman, you know, at times at his own game. Now, Keith Thurman did come back a lot and it ended up being a split decision. I just feel like Keith Thurman's going to struggle in this fight, you know. I wanted to see Keith Thurman at 147 pounds and see what he can do at 147 pounds. If he was coming up to 154 pounds, I'd like to see how he does against a few fighters at that weight. I wouldn't want to see him straight in at Jermell Charlo at his best. And I wouldn't necessarily want to see him straight in with Tim Tszyu. And I think those two are the best at 154 pounds. Keith Thurman needs to kind of warm up and kind of acclimatise to the weight a bit more and fight a few people before he fights the two best guys. And like I said, Tim Tszyu is one of them, and Jermell Charlo would be the other. And I don't think Keith Thurman beats them, both of them. I think it's a bit early for Keith Thurman, but what can he do? He's been inactive for a long time. He needs to get a fight. They offered him the right fight and he said yes, and that's all he can do. Like I said, he lost to Manny Pacquiao. I think he's going to lose this too, but it's not a foregone conclusion at all. Keith Thurman has all the skills to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if he outboxes Tim Tszyu. I don't think he stops him. Keith Thurman has not stopped anyone for a while. I don't think if he couldn't stop Mario Barrios, then I don't see Keith Thurman stopping Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu is a lot tougher than Mario Barrios and a lot bigger. And I think it's going to be difficult for Keith. And if Keith loses this fight, where does Keith go from here? But Tim Tszyu, I think it's going to be an amazing scalp on his record. The best fighter he's fought so far. And I think, personally, it's going to be the best win of his career. I'd like to see what happens next after that. But yeah, let me know. I'm not going to make it a long video. I've made it long enough. Let me know what you think of this curveball. We all thought Terence Crawford would probably get the fight with Tim Tszyu, and Keith Thurman comes out of the woodwork and gets the fight. Who do you think's going to win? I've looked at a lot of different channels that have spoken about this and seen some comments. And so far, a lot of people think Keith Thurman is going to win this fight. And I just don't see it that way. I wouldn't be surprised if he won. You know, it's very, very close. Keith Thurman is one of the most talented fighters I've ever seen. But I think he's getting older. He's been inactive for a very long time. He's full of injuries. He's fighting a very tough guy, young, athletic-ish, a hard puncher, you know. And like I said, when I saw him in that fight against Lopez, I just felt like Keith Thurman has lost something. And then that was confirmed when he got beaten by Manny Pacquiao. And I just don't think he's the fighter he thinks he is in his mind. That's what really gets me. You know, when I see Keith Thurman talk, I'm so engaged in his interviews. He talks a great game, but unfortunately, he's been plagued with injuries. He's going to have a lot of ring rust going into this fight. He could surprise me. If he wins, I am fully back on the Keith Thurman hype train, most definitely. But I just think that time has kind of gone by. He's balding. He's getting a lot older, just like we all are, but we're not all professional boxers, you see. Time catches up with you. And I think at middleweight, it's Tim Tszyu's time. So my prediction for this fight will be Tim Tszyu, probably on points. I think Keith Thurman's got really good feet. I don't think he'll get stopped. But I think he's going to find that he's going to struggle to hurt Tim Tszyu. I believe Tim Tszyu is the future of the middleweight division. until Terence Crawford comes up there, and then I've got Terence Crawford beating everyone because I'm a die-hard fan. I don't see anyone beating Terence Crawford at the moment, including Canelo. But let's see what happens, man. Let me know in the comments what you think of this fight. And also, if you know, anyone out there who knows, let me know in the comments what's going on with the Errol Spence rematch. I mean, it seems much more likely now that Terence Crawford will rematch Errol Spence. I didn't think it would happen, but now obviously Tim Tszyu is contracted to fight Keith Thurman. So I think Terence Crawford will be interested in getting that fight done and dusted with Errol Spence. Errol Spence is really injured. Obviously, we've seen evidence of the eye injury. We know that he tried to get some kind of a shot for the rib injury, but you know, the problem is I've got a problem with Errol Spence's excuses, and I'll tell you why. Prior to the fight with Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, when they asked him in an interview, and I saw two interviews, one like a week out from the fight, and the other one like literally like the day before or 2 days before the fight. And in both cases, the interviewer asked Errol Spence for his honest opinion and what he thinks the result will be. Mind you, this is 1 week before the fight, and the other interview was like 3 days before the fight. And in both instances, Errol Spence said, I think I stop him. He said, I think it'll be a tough fight. He's a good fighter, but I think I'll stop him. I think I'll be too strong for him. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said he thinks he's going to stop Terence Crawford. He never said, I thought he'd go to decision. He never said, I'm going to do my best and the best man will win. He said, I think personally, although he's a good fighter, I will stop him. Now, let me know something. If you've got a rib injury which stopped you from sparring for weeks, and you've been having some trouble with your vision, which you would know, you don't need a diagnosis of cataracts to know that you couldn't see, that you're having trouble with your vision. You know, you have trouble with your vision first and then you get a diagnosis. It's not that, you know, like Errol Spence said, oh, you know, the doctor just said I had cataracts and that's why I was getting hit. You know if your eyesight is impaired. Now, if your eyesight is really impaired and you know what your eyesight is normally like, and you can tell that it's a little bit impaired and you're not seeing certain things, you don't need a diagnosis of cataracts to know that your eyesight is impaired. You know, if you haven't sparred for you know, weeks prior to the fight, you're not gonna say in an interview, oh, I think I'm gonna stop him. You wouldn't say that. If I know I'm not 100% at all, but I'm not telling people and I still want the fight to go ahead, I'm gonna say things like, you know, the best man's going to win. I'm going to give it my best. I'm sure he will. And the best man's going to win. This is the kind of talk I'm going to be speaking, because I know I'm injured. You know, if you know you're injured, you're not going to go in there saying, you know, yeah, I think I'm going to stop one of the best fighters in the world. He's taking the fight to not let the fans down. He knows he's not 100%. He knows he's injured. He's going to go in there and give it his best. Yeah. If you know you've got a rib injury, and you've got eye injury and you've got residual damage and you've got all sorts of issues, maybe, you know, after running that hill, you know, you're not completely hydrated, you know, you don't feel 100%, you wouldn't claim twice in 2 interviews that you're probably going to stop one of the best fighters in the world. Yeah, you wouldn't say that. You would say something more like, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to give it my best shot. This is the kind of rhetoric that you normally hear from someone if they're injured and they know they're injured. Just a guess. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say it's excuses, but the idea that these injuries were as severe as Errol Spence is making out, because Errol Spence is making out that these injuries were really severe, that the rib injury was so severe that he couldn't spar, and the eye injury, it was impairing his vision. And if it was that bad, honestly, if it was that bad, why would you say that you think you're going to stop one of the best fighters in the world? It doesn't seem to make sense to me. It seems more like he may have had some of these injuries. They were niggling injuries. And after he got stopped, they became more severe. That's what makes sense to me. Personally, I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your views on that controversial topic. I'm not an Errol Spence hater, but, you know, Errol Spence was just so adamant that he would stop Terence Crawford, and then afterwards all these injuries became so severe and he knew about it. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I'm on to the next one.
Guess who's back? Man, guess who's back? I said, guess who's